Good morning to those of you that have just arrived. We're going to kick the program off in just in a minute or so. Let a few more folks join in. So just give us about 90 seconds and we'll start off the program. I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. We've got a few people that have already joined us. So good morning, everyone. My name is Tommy Johnson. I'm with the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's Eaton Peabody's Growth Basics for Business. This is our monthly breakfast seminar series, which provides a forum to gain useful do-it-yourself workplace solutions and insightful actionable tips. Along with Eaton Peabody, I want to thank our virtual sponsor, Anania Bailey, for allowing us to bring this event series to you virtually this entire season. I'd like to welcome you all to this final installment of Growth Basics for the calendar year 2021-22. This is a 10-part season-long series that runs from September through June. Now, today's topic, Attract and Engage Employees Through Human-Centered Leadership, is presented by Tisha Bremner. In this post-pandemic environment, many organizations are challenged to attract, retain, and engage employees. You'll learn from the perspective of a corporate well-being coach what you, as a leader, can do to make a difference and deliver on what employees want most from work and their employers. Tisha will share 3 actionable takeaways to improve the culture and connection between leaders and employees so that you can attract top talent and keep people more happily engaged at work. Now, like all the Chamber's virtual signature events, today's presentation is free and will be recorded and made available for free replay on the Chamber's website and YouTube page. To keep up to date on all the Chamber's news and events, please visit our website, portlandregion.com, check out our events page, and sign up for our weekly email newsletter when you're there. Before we get to today's presentation, I'd like to ask all participants to mute their cameras and microphones, and also remind you that if you have questions for our presenter, please type them in the Zoom chat, and I will relay them to her after each of the 3 segments that we're going to be hearing from during the presentation. Now, at this point, I'd like to acknowledge our presenting sponsor for Growth Basics for Business, Eaton Peabody. For the past 4+ years, Eaton Peabody has been the presenting sponsor of this series, and they continue their support this season. Now I'd like to invite Marketing Manager Nate Levesque to say a few words.
Great. Thank you, Tommy. As you said, I can't believe that this is the end of our 4th season. I remember starting here at the boardroom here at Eaton Peabody many years ago, and having just a few people trickle in and being so happy when we filled that room for the first time. And now we've seen attendance boom, and I think we're on a really good track for the future. So I want to thank the Portland Chamber for doing such a great job of putting these together, providing new and engaging content month after month. I also want to thank Tisha for joining us today. I look forward to these events every single month, and I'm really excited about the presentation today. So whether this is your first Basics event or your 10th, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us. For those of you that may not be familiar with Eaton Peabody, we are a full-service, Maine-based law firm with nearly 50 attorneys serving Maine clients from offices in Augusta, Bangor, Brunswick, Ellsworth, and Portland. We assist companies of all sizes in a variety of industries, so whether you're an established financial institution or a small business just taking your first steps, we can help with all of your legal needs. To learn more about the services that we provide and the industries that we serve, please visit our website, eatonpeabody.com. Also be sure to follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn to stay up to date with legal updates as well as future presentations. Thank you. Back to you, Tommy.
Thank you, Nate. And really, it's been a pleasure to be able to work with Nate and the entire team at Eaton Peabody. They provide presenters and panelists for this series, and also just some great support from Nate and his team. So thanks again to everybody at Eaton Peabody, and especially Nate. So on to our presentation. With us today is Tisha Bremner. She's a well-being coach and owner of Inner Light Wellness. She and her staff work with organizations throughout the country to improve employee well-being, enhance team effectiveness, and build human-centered leadership competencies. She believes that if you empower the inner light of connection, authenticity, and wisdom within people, they will unleash their full potential. Their company values professionalism, ethics, and creating a culture of caring in all that we do. Their business is designed to help employees and organizations flourish from the inside out. Take it away, Tisha.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Tommy. I'm delighted to be here. So as we all know and think about this post-pandemic environment, I think that we have a lot of opportunities ahead of us with respect to our organizations and our leadership, and that's what this talk is all about. So I brought to you today some really kind of simple business basics that might help you on your way as we sort of move forward out of the heart of the pandemic and into this environment that we're currently in. So we're all aware that employee attrition continues to be, and has been a real challenge. One of the things that I like to take a look at is really sort of the higher level environment of what is happening. And what I've seen across the board at the variety of organizations where I work is that the pandemic obviously caused a lot of fear. And that fear gave folks an opportunity to just sort of relook at their values and the ways that we find meaning and purpose in our lives, and certainly in the workplace. And so when we look at, and we'll talk about this as we get into the presentation today, when we look at employee attrition, the vast majority of people are leaving their organizations due to controllable factors that are related to leadership, to management, and to some of the skills with respect to how managers can address and communicate with their employees. And these factors are controllable. And the wonderful thing is, I think that they're not all about money. So what I've seen is that there are some other primary drivers. So I often hear from organizations that they're concerned that that pay is the primary contributor, but I'm not seeing that at all. And so what I have seen instead is employees having some values that are somewhat misaligned, or they're not finding the right amount of challenge in their work, or feeling recognized, appreciated, rewarded for their contributions, feeling a lack of support or autonomy, maybe some discriminatory environments and workloads that are heavy over a long period of time. And we understand that the environment that we've been in has been really challenging. But I think this is really a perfect time to take a step back and to look at the bigger picture, to look at our organizational needs, to look at the people within our organizations, and to consider how we rebuild. And in doing so, think about employee well-being. And we'll talk about this in just a moment. But well-being is really about considering our humanity. And in this time, as we rebuild, think about ways that we can heal as individuals. So I want to get right into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as we look at employees' needs, they're really, I have found that employees are really looking at opportunities to be challenged, to grow, and to work in a purposeful, meaningful way. Employees are looking to develop healthy relationships at work so that there's a sense of opportunity and accountability. And I think that they're looking for sort of those human-centered skills or competencies from their leadership so that there's a sense of psychological safety. And when we think about leadership and what people need is that sense of safety, because when we're fearful, it actually brings out the worst in us. So think about the past couple years and how fear and uncertainty maybe have contributed to you to not bringing out your very best. Or maybe you've seen it in terms of your employees. So really what I think attracting and engaging employees is about is learning how to be human-centered, fulfill the basic needs in the workplace, and to motivate employees. So many of you are familiar with this concept of the carrot and the stick, reward and punishment. And what I find as a well-being coach working in many organizations is that this model is no longer effective because it contributes to that fear base that we've all experienced, unfortunately, over the past couple of years. And when we're fearful, like I said a moment ago, it doesn't bring out the best in us. And it also causes us to be reactionary, right? We're seeking that safe space. And so we might fight, we might flee. This is what I think we're seeing in the great attrition, or we might freeze. We don't step into our greatest capacities, and we might become a little bit apathetic if we're not motivated in an engaging and meaningful way. And so as we look at what employees really need to flourish in the workplace, it, I believe, is intrinsic motivation. And it requires us as leaders to look at three things and to sort of approach the way that we treat people in three ways, getting right to kind of the neuroscience of some of those basic needs that we all have, which bring about intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation is the internal drive that we all have when we're engaged to contribute, to bring our best selves into every aspect of our lives, and to follow motivation that is outside of reward and punishment, or pay and praise. So this is the pride, the drive for success, the need to positively contribute to solutions and to achievements within the organization. And what I see in employees is that they all have it. And if we do three things as leaders, which really is to see people as individuals, to get to know our employees and to help them to feel comfortable being themselves at work, because in that comfort, people find psychological safety. And when they're safe, they're curious, they're creative, they're confident, they're caring. The next thing that we can do as leaders is to hear our people. So to give our people access, right, to the table where they might share their ideas, their opinions, their voice. And so to step out of our own preconceived notions about employees and staff, and to really give them an opportunity to share without fear. It's an element of psychological safety. And then the third piece is to be valued, to be understood for who you are, what you can contribute, and to value each employee as an individual for their contributions to the organization. And it's It's really simple neuroscience that when we see, hear, and value people, they feel safe and they're able to bring their individuality, their creativity, the best parts of themselves to work. And unfortunately, over the past few years, couple of years, we've had so many things going on where we've had to respond, that what I've seen in organizations is that these three elements have sometimes gone by the wayside. So I'm curious if there's any questions here after this first segment, let's say. Feel free to add them to the chat, and Tommy will let us know.
Nothing yet, Tisha, but
Great, thanks. So as we think about meeting our employees' basic needs, especially to be seen, heard, and valued, it invites us to step out of maybe a more traditional transactional leadership style, where we motivate with that reward and punishment, where it's very top down and there's this sense of obeying leaders, and maybe some micromanagement, right? Monitoring and controlling very closely what's happening within our employees. What I've seen in these environments is that this is one of the primary causes. Transactional leadership approaches is one of the primary causes of people leaving their job, because they're not seen, heard, and valued for what they can contribute. When we think about leadership, I invite you all to take an inspirational approach, right? And Skye schooling says employees who work under great leaders tend to be happier, more productive, and more connected to their organizations. And this has a ripple effect that reaches your business's bottom line. So when employees feel safe, understood, valued, they flourish, and they bring that energy, enthusiasm, and intrinsic motivation to your organization so that everyone benefits. And when I think about the core competencies of human-centered leaders, there's a very basis of what is Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. So here we have the person on the left whose mind is locked. This is how we've done it in the past. This is how we're going to continue doing it in the future. There's no room for change or growth. But what I think leaders are really being called upon by this attrition is to become more growth-oriented, to take feedback as opportunities to always think about learning and growing and developing not only themselves, but their employees. So opportunities and challenges. So a few of the human-centered leadership competencies work to build trust and psychological safety. And this is on the individual and the team basis. Human-centered leaders bring meaning, purpose, and value to the work that is being done. And rather than, managing or being the boss, they coach for talent and growth, and can scout talent in people, even when perhaps they can't even see it within themselves. And human-centered leadership brings an equal amount of empathy and of accountability. Because I think at the very heart of human flourishing at work is that we all want to contribute and we all want to be successful. So if you're a leader looking to develop more human-centered leadership skills, I want to offer you 3 to look at today. And the first is empathy. Your ability to understand the feelings, the needs, right, the circumstances of other people. And this relates right back to seeing your employees for who they are, the value they bring, the talents they have, and their opportunities for growth. And the second is kind of a scary word, vulnerability. Vulnerability is really about tuning into our humanity, in my opinion, that we all have parts of ourselves that can excel, and we have skills that are great, and we also have opportunities for growth and learning. And as a leader, when you are vulnerable, you're more apt to listen, right? You don't believe that you have all of the answers, but you give people a shared opportunity to contribute. And you build that communication by being transparent with what is happening within the organization, so that there becomes a mutual understanding and accountability to getting to the place of just being successful within the business. And then the third skill that I would recommend, or capacity, competency, that you could develop as a human-centered leader, is humility. So humility is to value others equally as yourself. Humility offers everyone that seat at the table and the ability to be valued for their contributions and their successes. So this is really, human-centered leadership is asking us to kind of step out of that transactional, traditional, hierarchical structure within organizations, right? Where the leaders are expected to have the answers, to find the solutions, to come up with the solutions to all of the problems, and instead build a network where everyone can contribute to the appropriate degree that they're able. And what I see this network as is a network of connection and collaboration. And so in my business, I will come in and consult with other organizations, and I have lots of great ideas and a whole slew of data and research behind me. But it's always best when there's a conversation that happens about what is going on within the organization. So what is the situation that folks are finding themselves in? And what are the outcomes that they're looking to achieve? And so how can we build programs, build policies, build best practices together to meet the needs of employees so that the business is successful? And so 3 things as a business that I recommend that we all take a look at right now is to regroup the way that we do business, the way that we treat our employees. So start having conversations, do a survey, and begin to name the challenges that you're facing with a level of transparency, so everyone knows what ground you stand on. Be perfectly honest about what can be addressed and explain why some things cannot, with that level of transparency. And the second is to rebrand. So begin to look at your employee philosophy, your charter, your people mission. Maybe update your vision and your values so that employees are motivated and inspired and fed. And perhaps build some team or community agreements so that you begin to find more cohesion, some smarter strategies, some innovative solutions. And this stuff might sound really simple, and it is. It's intended to be really simple so that we can take a few action items and move forward. And what I really love is this graphic Because as we see some of the original Apple, Starbucks, and Pepsi branding, it doesn't get more complicated. So the top line is the original. The bottom line is what we see today. The branding actually gets less complicated, more simple, easy to digest. And I would recommend that you take a look at that within your organizations as well. And then the third is to rebuild using some of these human-centered guiding principles so that there's more collaboration, coaching, and support across your organization, so that there are opportunities to learn, succeed, and grow. And if any of you are doing DEI work, these philosophies, these principles completely align with an organization that is more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable. So here, why bother? Why bother to shift? Why bother to do the work? Because our organizations will accomplish more. People will want to work. They'll want to stay at our organizations. And I think these are sustainable practices with respect to how we treat people and add to the value of people's well-being. So the three things that you'll get out of a more human-centered environment is excellent customer experiences. And these are internal and external customer experiences. So we think about the relationships that are built at work and the relationships that are built outside of our organizations. And I know that when people feel great, they treat customers really well. And the second is a higher level of operational effectiveness. When there's psychological safety, opportunities to contribute, and possibilities to grow, people bring more of themselves to their organizations, which help our organizations to run better, to find those innovative solutions, to solve problems, to aim for positive outcomes, which yield greater success. And that sense of achievement that people have that fills and feeds each of our basic needs around work. I don't know many employees who want to come to work and not be successful. So this just goes right at the heart of what we need in terms of our accomplishments and sense of success at work. And it also goes along for the business as a whole. And so here, when we think about human-centered leadership, it has a few elements, right? The ability to build trust and to create a psychologically safe workplace by seeing, hearing, and valuing people for who they are and for what they contribute. The ability to recognize and align meaning and purpose between people and organizations. This gets right into intrinsic motivation. So when individuals are working towards something that they believe in, something that they're inspired to do, they're going to bring more of themselves to the work, which has a ripple effect to the entire organization, right? The ability to grow and develop people by coaching and mentoring them. So providing opportunities and holding people accountable to their deliverables helps with achievement across the board. And then the ability to empathize and to take action accordingly. So these are all great ways that really engage, attract, and retain people. So I want to open it up to questions. Would anyone like to add a question to the chat, or just come on and turn your mic on and ask a question or offer a comment?
Tisha, I had a question that I was going to ask it as a sort of a yes/no question. Understanding that the chamber has, and in the state of Maine, organizations and businesses are primarily small business, so fewer than 50 or 20 or even 10 employees. I was going to ask you if this sort of model is harder to execute in a larger organization or a smaller, but instead of giving that answer, I might maybe have you play out a couple of scenarios of what it looks like to employ these tactics within a small organization, which most of us are employed by, and maybe how that might also extrapolate to a large organization.
So I think, yes, it's possible. And two organizations right off the bat come to mind. So Safe Voices, Elise Johansson is the executive director. Are you familiar with that organization? It's a local Lewiston Auburn organization. So Elise and her team just, revamped a few things. First, they revamped compensation, and they're building more and more of these human-centered leadership practices into their organization. And one of the things that I think is very important and really a very simple question to ask is that they took these principles and developed a plan. And rather than saying, can we get this done? The leadership team met, in addition to bringing on other employees, they met and they said, how can we do this? So with a shared voice, they're building these principles and practices into their organization. And on the larger scale, I think of Kevin Hancock, the CEO of Hancock Lumber, and a totally different organization, right? So, I go to Bethel regularly and pass their mill up there. And Kevin Hancock is doing this same type of thing as well. And he's calling it shared leadership, where people are seen, heard, valued, understood for who they are, and their leaders are, offering opportunities to share their voice and to contribute and to add to the success of the organization. So I actually think these principles are, you're able to utilize them in small organizations and social service organizations and organizations where you might actually not necessarily think so, as Kevin Hancock's, Hancock Lumber is doing. So it's possible.
That's good to hear. And I guess the follow-up question to my question, and then we do have a question from somebody, one of the attendees, is, talk about the sustainability or the ability to maintain the engagement when you take this approach. It's always a great idea off the start, but then how do you maintain that regularly throughout the year, throughout, the 5 years of a company's experience?
I think you maintain it by self-reflection. And there's one emotion that I see regularly in the workplace that really is an indicator that folks are off track. And that emotion is the emotion of contempt for employees, which is, well, I'm the leader and I'm better. And as soon as you see any element of that, you know that you are egregiously off track. And I want to encourage folks to then get back into the humility, the vulnerability, and the empathy.
Excellent. Our first question from our participants today comes from Sarah Spear. She asks, have you seen examples where shared leadership can work well, non-hierarchical leadership?
I have seen examples where, the non-hierarchical works well, and there is a balance, right? At the end of the day, there are, CEOs and presidents and executive directors who do have to make a decision and move forward. And these examples, I would say, are Safe Voices and Hancock Lumber. I'm working with several organizations who are aspiring to get to this place because they're recognizing their leadership approach is not working. And it's really what's driving people away. And again, I think that litmus test of, am I holding my staff to any degree of contempt? Do I think I'm better than they are? Do I think I have all of the answers? And if there's the slightest hint of that, this is an opportunity for you as a leader to regroup, because you're not seeing the potential in your employees and you're cutting out their voice. and their capacity to contribute. It's tough. It is really tough to look at this, but it's also critical. And I think sometimes the fallout can be, oh, well, they're just going to work at a place that's easier for more money. That is absolutely not what I'm hearing. In 2021, I worked with an organization and did a lot around employee retention, and actually saved that organization close to $500,000 by coaching their employees through burnout and building some resilience. And I did not see in one case where someone was primarily seeking better compensation. Just wasn't happening. It was all of these other things.
Tisha, we've got a lot of folks who are joining us today right now who are managers and who are leaders within their organization. But talk a little bit about the folks who may be at, like you said, an entry level or a junior level, or coming from an internship, just starting at an organization. I'll give our example with the Chamber of Commerce. We're a small organization. We have 6, 7, 8 employees. We have to all have a shared voice, because there's just so few of us that can contribute to all the work we do. So it's just as important for our CEO to contribute as it is for somebody who's just coming off an internship. Talk about how someone who is newer or younger in their career, how they can sort of feel emboldened and sort of what that might look like.
I think it's around, I think leaders in terms of working, or everyone in the organization in terms of working with interns, need to help people to be comfortable, to give them, just in terms of who they are, to be comfortable, to be seen, to be able to have access to those conversations where their opinion is taken into consideration, and to be encouraged. So, I think sometimes a fresh look at a situation is really valuable. So if you're, bringing on an intern, take a step back, look at the bigger picture. Try to understand what it is that they're saying, what their experience is, what their contributions are. So rather than having any preconceived notions that, oh, you're young, you're too idealistic, take that step back and see if you can mindfully look at the whole picture of what this person, their perspective is.
Thank you for that. And I guess the question that everyone probably is maybe afraid to ask, but in terms of embracing this mindset, what's the first step look like? So an organization that's never done this before and who is sort of operated in opposition to this mindset, what's the first step look like, and how do we all sort of come to one and begin to accept this?
I think the first step really looks like doing those surveys and having those tough conversations. Creating safe space, asking the questions, and building from the bottom up. So do an assessment. Where are you, at this time? Why are people leaving your organization? Talk to the people who are staying, and create a sense of safety that they can honestly express what's going on and what they need from you. So it's really regrouping. Take that big step back and look, with wide open eyes. What is going on? How am I motivating people? How am I developing them? Am I seeing talents? And am I taking the human or the well-being of our employees and linking it to the objectives of the business?
Thank you. We do have another question from Deanna Partridge. She says, in this competitive job market, what are some of the ways you see that employers can indicate in their recruitment materials, whether it's job postings, hiring flyers, et cetera, that they are aware of this and they're undergoing this quote unquote regroup, rebrand, rebuild process?
Mm-hmm. I think that they can, take a look at their employee philosophy and promote that. Rebrand your organization. Like after you make those assessments and you shift your priorities, then make it known, put it in there. We care about people. We are, walking the talk around human-centered leadership. We are focused on employee well-being, and, speak of the ways that you are, focused on employee well-being, and how can you create the policies that offer an environment that will support that. So think about flexible, work schedules and employee benefits and opportunities for growth and development. So I think about my son-in-law. He entered a company in his early 20s, and they really saw his level of motivation and his drive to succeed. And they have just been fostering him for 10 years. And he's had other opportunities to leave and to go to different places. And he's so dedicated to the company that he works for, because they've asked him questions, they've helped him to craft the roles that he's had so that he can gain the experience. And he's been a vice president for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. So being able to spot talent and cultivate talent within people will keep them.
That's a great story to hear about your son-in-law. And as I'm listening to that, I'm realizing, maybe others are as well, within our own organization here at the Chamber, I know we've employed some of those type of tactics, but there's certainly some other tips that you've mentioned throughout the presentation that I think we certainly can employ, and I think others might gain from as well. I don't see any other questions that are coming through the chat. I just want to give folks just another second. If you do have questions for Tisha, please do put them in the chat function down below. If you missed out on it, we can accept some questions if you want to email the Chamber at chamber@portlandregion.com, and we can send them to Tisha as a follow-up. Tisha, did you have any final sort of closing thoughts that you wanted to convey to everyone before we set everybody free?
Sure. So just a couple final thoughts. These are our offerings, some motivational talks, leadership development workshops, and coaching for managers. So this is on the human-centered leadership side of the house. And then we offer health and wellness and well-being, educational workshops, and individual coaching for employees. Thank you for joining me today. So I'm Tisha Bremner, the owner of Inner Light Wellness. I had fun talking to you all this morning. So thanks again.